Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and we have Randy Watts on the show to talk about a book that he wrote a dozen years ago or so, like that.
2016.
8 years ago.
8 years ago. But I recently discovered Randy, and so I thought it'd be interesting to come on the show. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Gene. It's an honor to be here.
And thanks, Maven, for coming on and helping out.
Appreciate it.
So, Randy, we like to talk about like your upbringing and what your life was like for 5 minutes or so, as a kid growing up in the LDS church, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's not a very normal story. So my story is not a typical one. My biological mother was involved in an affair with a mafioso out of Tucson, Arizona. Tucson used to be the mafia headquarters for the West. And she got pregnant, and she was a divorced mother with 3 kids, and she was afraid that if they found out she'd had a baby out of wedlock, that the dad would keep her from ever seeing her kids. So she gave me up for adoption. I was adopted immediately. The doctor took me from her arms and put me in the arms of a nurse and said, "This is an adoptive baby. Get him out of here. We don't want mom, connecting with him." So I was adopted by a family, very, very LDS. I had 3 older sisters. I was the baby of the family. I joined right in. I was very active for most of my life. For the first 40 years. I held every calling I think a guy can hold. I was never a bishop. I was executive secretary to 3 of them.
So you grew up in Mesa?
I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, yeah, which is very Mormon.
I'm curious if you knew you were adopted. Was that a conversation you had at home, or was that like a family secret?
No, it was a conversation that we had from the time I can remember. They actually celebrated October 10th, which was called Adoption Day.
You would have to be sealed to them because you weren't born in the covenant. Was there a temple sealing?
There was a temple sealing when I turned 8. I had to turn 8 before I could be sealed to them.
Oh, is that a rule for adoptees, like adoptive children?
I remember it. I remember going to the temple because I was playing with the toys they had in the nursery. I don't remember what happened after that, but I was sealed to them. Yeah, I had 3 older sisters and very TBM. And I went on a mission to Spain, Madrid, and had a great mission. I think it was a successful mission. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. But there were a lot of things that I started to notice on my mission that just didn't make too much sense to me. And I was telling Gene that it was about halfway through my mission. I was meeting in a member's house, and the Jehovah's Witnesses came by. And the people invited them right on in and said, "The Mormons are here. You guys need to talk." And of course, they were always wanting the Bible. And I just wasn't into that. But I listened to this woman as she bore her testimony and teared up. She teared up. She was crying. She says, "I know with all my heart that this is the true church of Jesus Christ." And then her companion did the same thing. And they were so sincere. I'm like, well, how is it that I could bear my testimony and say, I know this is true, but someone from a completely different faith can say the same thing? How is that? We're the only true church.
I know on my mission, I mean, not just the mission, but I think in the church, I think everyone has heard this at some point, but they really hammered it a lot on the mission was that, like, basically, if you ever get somewhere with your back against the wall, like, always rely on testimony, like that is always reliable. You can always do that. Was that a thing for you? Do you recall on your mission?
Yeah. They absolutely drove that into us that, hey, if nothing else, bear your testimony to them. And you know what? When I would bear my testimony, like if I'd get up in the ward and bear my testimony, I didn't cry because the Spirit was burning within me. I would shed some tears when I started talking about my family, It's just because it's my family, and I'm very emotional about them. My kids, I have 4 children, 5 grandkids, but yeah, I never really broke down because the spirit was so strong. I started to have my doubts and things didn't make sense to me. So I started doing a few studies and listening to podcasts, and the rest is history. Here I am. I love I love the members of the church, I should say.
And your faith crisis was around 1998 or something?
Well, actually, the true, real faith crisis happened about 4 years ago. And it was when I happened to catch an episode of John DeLynn. I didn't even know these post Mormon podcasts existed. I thought I was the only one that was going through such trauma. But
Well, we've missed. So in the meantime, you've married and you have children. Was that also all in the church or
I was married in the temple. I
with
came,
no testimony?
yep. I came home from my mission and started dating the girl that I left behind right away. And, they say get married right away. And she was pressuring me, and I got married right away. I was married 8 months after I got home from my mission and had a baby 9 months after that. And that was the start of my family. I had 4 kids, lived in Mesa. Uh, I was doing a lot of different things. When people say, "What was your main job?" It's like I could tell them. It would be easier for me to say I can tell you what jobs I haven't had. I haven't worked in fast food and I haven't sold cars. Other than that, I think I've done it. And in Mesa, I became a police officer. And one day we decided to go to Walt Disney World and just take a trip and explore the parks. And my wife and I did that. We left the kids at home this time because we wanted to feel it out and see if it would make a good family vacation. We didn't have enough time to make it a family vacation. And we just got a wild hair up our nostrils and decided to go to where they apply for jobs. It was called the Casting Center. I went and was interviewed, and they don't hire full time, they only hire part time. But something made this guy hire me full time. I told him my police experience, detective experience, my writing experience, because I've been writing my whole life, and he hired me as an investigator. They don't call them detectives. An investigator for the city of Bay Lake. And so that's how I became a detective with Disney. And then halfway through my time at Disney, I was honored to be made a resort manager. They selected me to go through Walt Disney World University. And I did. And I was the first guy from security to ever do that, or from law enforcement to ever go into Disney management. But I went through the courses and became a resort manager and had a great time. It was an enjoyable job. One day the Peabody Hotel came calling, and they hired me away by doubling my salary to come manage the Peabody Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow.
And yeah, so I was there for 5, 6 years. But then my folks got Alzheimer's. Both my mother and my father got
Ooh.
Alzheimer's. So I flew back to Arizona. My 3 sisters took care of my mom. I took care of my dad. Oh, P.S. I was divorced while living in Memphis, Tennessee. My wife and I grew apart, um, and I ended up being single. So,
Can I ask, so you were still, I guess, kind of a closeted unbeliever all this time? Was that part of the separation with your wife or no?
no, she actually coasted on my testimony the whole time we were together.
On
Uh,
your non-testimony, because you didn't
on
have one.
testimony, yeah. Well, and Maven, I say I didn't have a testimony. I had doubts.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't educated enough to not have a testimony. That's but about 4 years ago is when I started doing some research and finding the podcasts and things and saying I'm not crazy. This is not right. This is not the truth. And
Okay. I misunderstood your story then. So you are a believer still. You just have some doubts and some things that aren't reconciled Yeah.
Oh,
Would you
at the time I was a believer. I am not a believer now.
Got it.
would you say that you were somebody that would, when you were bearing your testimony, would say, "I believe in Jesus," instead of saying, "I know Jesus is my Savior"?
Yes, I would modify the commonalities of testimonies. I couldn't say, I know this church is true. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God. You know what? I didn't. So I didn't say that. I said things like, I'm thankful to be a member of this ward. I'm thankful for my family and that we can come and be edified every Sunday. But no, I couldn't tell him that I knew with all my heart that it was the truth. And when things started, getting clear for me, then I just cut it off totally. I do wish I could have all my tithing back that I paid. When my wife died, there was a little life insurance, and so much of it went to the church thinking, oh, I haven't told you about my wife dying. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go back to
I'm sorry.
where your marriage breaks up, and then what happens from there to go.
I left my wife and two of my children in Memphis, Tennessee. And I took two of my two youngest, and because they wanted to move to Arizona, and the older two didn't really want to because they were so involved in their school activities. I ended up in Arizona, where I happened to meet. Well, actually, one day my sister called me and said, "Do you remember a girl named Melinda Masterson?" I'm like, "Do I remember? She was the hottie of the high school. Every boy had a crush on Melinda. Of course, I remember her, including me. I had a huge crush on her." She said, "Oh, I was just curious. I met her sister in Costco, and she's single, and you're single. And I just thought maybe I could get her phone number for you if you wanted to give her a call." I'm like, "Shut up. Really?" So she got me the phone number. I gave her a call, and I hear this message. It says, it was a answering machine. It said, "Hi, this is Bosco. My owner is not available right now, but if you leave a message, I might call you back." And I hear this dog, Bosco, bark. And so I figured out, okay, Bosco's a dog. So I left a message saying, "Hey, I know this is a blast from the past. I don't know if you remember me, but my name is Randy Watts. I grew up I went to junior high and high school with her, so I was hoping she'd remember me. And I said, I'd love it if you'd give me a call." And I left my phone number, and I'll be darned if 5 minutes later the phone didn't ring. She said, "Randy, this is Melinda Masterson." I'm like, "Oh." I said, "Melinda, I am so happy that you called me back." She goes, I never return calls, but she said, "I don't know. It's the way." What I said when the answering machine came on was, "Hi, Bosco. My name's Randy Watts. I went to high school with your owner, and I don't know if she'll remember me, but you sure sound like a nice puppy. I'd love to meet you." And so that's what she said. The way you answered that answering machine is why I called you back, because I loved that. Anyway, so we started dating, and man, I'll tell you, it was wonderful. We fell deeply in love and got married, not in the temple. Um,
What
not
year?
this was let's see, the divorce was 2001, and we were married in 2005.
And
In
since you weren't going to church, you gave yourself permission to like live together first before getting married and
Yeah,
seeing how things were.
right. I did have an apartment because I had my boys with me, but she convinced us to move in with her because she had plenty of room. So we did, and yeah, we were very happy.
Did she remember you from high school?
Yeah, she did. She said, "How could I forget you?" I was an entertainer. I was a ventriloquist and a guitarist. As a matter of fact, I wanted to tell you that I'm probably the only man you'll ever interview that has played the electric guitar in sacrament meeting and done a ventriloquist comedy skit in sacrament meeting at the bishop's request. because I was all over the place entertaining, and I was on a local TV show or two. And so when it was time for me to go on my mission, he said, "Hey, do you think you could play the guitar?" And I had written a song about being a missionary and my trepidations and fears. And he says, "Can you sing that?" I said, "Well, I don't have the sheet music for it for a pianist." He goes, "No, no, you have that electric guitar and the amplifier. Bring that in."
Wow.
That was
Hey,
progressive.
right?
Yeah.
And then he said, "And would you bring Sylvester?" That was the name of my dummy, my ventriloquist dummy. So yeah, I hear people say, "Oh, there's no instruments allowed in the chapel except for the violin and the piano." But I was banging on the electric guitar during sacrament meeting.
That would have been 1978, I bet.
Yeah, yeah. It was 78. That's right. And got home in 80.
I only know because I'm a week older than Randy, and so he has to address me as sir because of my
You,
elder
I,
statesman.
you and I and RFM are all in the same camp. So,
That's right.
David, I know you're only like 19, so
Appreciate it.
you're not in the same camp. But
Uh,
I don't know how old you are, but you look so young and vibrant that
thank
you're
you.
you're not real old.
You got half my age, quite literally. You just
Well,
double, and that's where I'm at.
yay! Well, you're still a young pup. Anyway, so yeah, I entertained throughout my youth, and so Melinda said, "Of course, I remember you. I went to your shows." And anyway, so we started dating, and I mean, we just hit it off, and we were engaged for 4 of those 5 years, and then we got married. And we got married in Sedona, Arizona. And we were the happiest couple, I think, ever. She was like my Disney princess. And
Mm.
I thought, I've got it made. And I
Did
will
it,
never find someone like, Melinda again.
did a shaman marry you?
It was it was actually the bishop from the ward that I belonged to. He went to Sedona and married us civilly, but it was really nice. And one day I was working out on the job, and this is all in the book, but this is the start of the reason I wrote this book. I was at my job and Melinda called me and she says, "Baby, I don't feel well." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. What can I get you?" She goes, "Nothing. I think I've got the flu." So I wrapped things up at work and I went home and took care of her. And over the next few nights, it got worse and worse. And she had temperatures of 104, going towards 105. And I took her into the doctor. And the doctor said that it looked like she might have and her back was killing her. I had to carry her to the restroom. And he said, "Well, it looks like she's just been laying down too long with a bad case of the flu and blah, blah, blah." Well, she got worse and worse, and it wasn't the flu. We went to a different doctor, and he did some blood tests, which my first doctor didn't do, and told us to go to the emergency room where they diagnosed her with leukemia.
Wow.
It was the acute form of leukemia that people don't recover from, or very rarely do, myeloidal leukemia. I moved into the hospital with her for 6 months, and 6 months later, she passed away. It was from the time she was
Wow.
diagnosed. It was right around Christmas. So it was December 16th. I hated Christmas for a long time. It was the most painful thing I've ever been through. I always thought, okay, if she dies, I think the funeral will be the hardest part, or the viewing and closing the casket. But then maybe I'll be okay. Well, I found out totally different, that the hardest part was not the funeral. It wasn't the closing of the casket. I was visiting with all the friends that were there. The viewing was huge. People were coming up and giving me their condolences, but I had to be friendly. But the next day at the funeral, after the viewing, after the funeral, we went to the cemetery, and lowered her, and there was a blessing on the grave. And then it started to hit me. It's like, wait, I'm going home and she's not going with me. And I took the boys and my stepson as well, her son. We all went they were starving because we'd been in hospice for 8 hours and they had no food. So I took them to breakfast and I just couldn't stop the tears. I just couldn't comprehend that my sweetheart was gone. Over the next several months, I felt like I wanted to kill myself. I felt like I wanted to just be off and away and gone.
Life had no more meaning.
It didn't. Food started losing its savory taste. Music, I didn't care for it anymore. I couldn't watch TV because it reminded me of every show we used to watch. I was in a mess, and I used to go to the cemetery and just walk this Mesa cemetery, looking at graves, looking at ages, seeing if other people have suffered like I am. I remember telling Melinda when she was sick several times, I'd kiss her and tell her that I wish I could take her pain. And, you know, once she died, it was my turn to take the pain. And I'm sorry to get emotional, but it kind of hits hard. And while she was in the hospital for that 6 months, I recorded everything. I took pictures, I wrote every day's activity, and I even got a website called the Leukemia Chronicles because I wanted her to be able to see everything she went through while she was in the hospital. I wanted her to know what all she went through while she was on such heavy drugs and painkillers. So I kept a record, kept photographs, and I was going to, show her that when she got better.
Because she was getting blessings.
Pardon?
She was getting blessings, and
Yeah.
you just knew that they would work.
She was getting blessings. The bishop came and gave her 2 blessings. And it didn't work. Which, I never really thought she was going to pass away. And it really took me off guard. I always thought, well, if the worst happened, if she did, but I never thought she was really gonna. And it was a tough row to hoe. And I tell people all the time, and in my book, and I do a lot of public speaking about grief, and I do radio shows about grief. And I always tell them, I'm honest with them, it's hard. This is not an easy thing to get through. If you love someone and they pass away, it is incredibly tough, especially if they're your other half or your child. Love, as I always said, love is the price we pay for grief. I'm sorry, grief is the price we pay for love. And I had plenty of grief. So I took that Leukemia Chronicles and pulled out all the personal stuff and thought, I want to start drinking. I want to do drugs. I want to do anything to forget about this. But instead, I'm gonna write everything down and make this a book for others, so that they know that there is hope. It took me 4 years, by the way. Russell Friedman was the nation's grief author, and he'd be the one that they'd call, like when Michael Jackson died, or when there was a big tragedy and hundreds of people are killed. They'd call this Russell because he was so good about grief. Well, he happened to be the neighbor of my brother-in-law, who's a Hollywood writer.
Oh.
I called my brother-in-law and, I was just telling him and crying what all had happened. And he said, hey, would you fly over here and talk to my neighbor, Russell? And I said, yeah, I was looking for any relief I could get. So I went to Russell's house and he took me in and he said, tell me about your wife. Tell me about your sweet wife. I'm sorry, I've got notifications coming in that I have to keep eliminating. Anyway, I started to tell him about Melinda and cried my eyes out. Put his hand on my shoulder and he said, my friend, you're not ready. You're not ready to write a book to help other people overcome grief. He said, when you can tell me about her and not tear up, then you'll be ready. So, and here I did tear up as I'm telling you, but I got there, and I changed Leukemia Chronicles to filling empty, not feeling empty, but filling empty, like filling an empty heart. That's the cover of the book right there. And,
Beautiful.
I start the book off letting people know I'm not an educated scholar on grief. I'm not a professor or anything. I'm a guy that just wanted to be gone off this earth. But I was able to hang in there, and I'm so thankful I was. The subtitle of Filling Empty is, it says, for those whose partners have left them for death, and for those whose partners still may. So it's really a book for everyone, especially if someone has lost a loved one and they need some comfort because of everything that that I covered in the book. I now have two more. The book was well received, and I've got two more on their way to publishing right now. But that's how Filling Empty came about. In the chapter, I think it's chapter 10, it's called Love Notes from Heaven. And it talks all about signs that I saw from Melinda, signs that several couples I interviewed, or widows and widowers I interviewed, would tell me how their loved ones communicated with them. And I had so many different experiences with Melinda letting me know she was around. And so I wrote about all of that. And that was really the most popular chapter ever because people love to hear stories about that. So my next book coming up is called Encounters with Spirit. That's what it's called for now. But it's about paranormal, spiritual. I hate to use paranormal, but that's what it is. Paranormal, spiritual type things, ghost type things. Since I was 4, I've been having experiences. I don't believe that the LDS Church has it figured out. As a matter of fact, I completely disagree with their plan of salvation and how it all works. It makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense that could be true. I have seen, and I have. This is. I don't mean to sound like someone right out of the Inquirer, but since I was 4, I've had experiences where I either feel, see, or hear spirits. I've had full-on apparitions, right down to, feeling that, hearing crowds in my room. And when I was 4, I ran up to my mom and dad's room and I said, hey, there's a lot of people talking in my room and I don't see anybody. And my mom came down and tucked me in and said, it's just your imagination. You're just dreaming. But as soon as she walked out of the room, I started hearing voices again. And that's the start of it all. That's the start of it all. And Melinda made several wonderful, she manifested herself to me on several occasions. I know there's life after death. I don't doubt that because I've seen it. I'd be stupid to try to think that when we die, that's it. But I don't have any evidence that says that what the church has taught about our plan of salvation. I believe in a God, whatever he looks like, whatever he is. He's not the
Or
Mormon
she.
or she. They're not the Mormon God that I always learned about because, once again, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Kind of
as a Mormon, I knew that near-death experiences couldn't possibly be true because everybody should be coming back saying, "Hey, it's the Mormon Church in heaven."
right. I I called one of my bosses one time and I said, "You're not going to believe who's on the phone. The good news is it's Jesus Christ." He said, "What could be bad?" I said, "Well, he's calling from Salt Lake City."
Do you mind if I jump in with a story of mine that I think it's relevant. I hope our audience thinks so. But On my mission in one of my last areas, we had an investigator who her name was Hilda, and her husband had lung cancer. He had been an avid smoker and tobacco chewer his whole life. So yeah, the missionaries before I got there had found them and had started teaching him, and things started to really go downhill for him at that point. And I remember so we hadn't been able to get her to church or anything because she was full-time caring for her husband. And then and they lived kind of pretty far out from where the rest of the ward was, so really at the edge of where like our missionary boundaries were, where we were allowed to be, almost opposite from the ward building, and where most of the other members were. And we were driving around one day. We got a call from Hilda saying that she urgently needed help. Her husband had been at the hospital, and we had even visited him there. But it was, it was hospice. At this point, he was going to be going within the next few months, they were thinking, and he wanted to die at home. So they had gotten things set up. They had a bed, on the first floor and everything. So they were taking him home by ambulance, but they didn't know that her house wasn't accessible. So it was just the stairs. There was just a bunch of concrete stairs to be able to get up into the house. That was the main thing. And it was too big for, the hospital stretcher to be able to get up in there. So they would need physically people to be able to lift him up. And this was a big guy. And so she didn't know what to do. So she called and she asked for help. She said, "Is there anybody that you can send to help us?" And I remember, feeling like this was such a miracle because they were going to get there soon. And again, we knew all the ward members lived like a significantly far away, like half an hour or more. But we called our elders quorum president, and it just so happened that he and our mission leader, like they were together, and they were like 10 minutes away
Oh,
from where she was. Yeah. So we asked for the help. We gave them the address. We all arrive on the scene at the same time. I'm going, I remember my companion and I are standing actually on opposite sides of the front door. I think I was holding the front door, open with my hands so that they could come in. And right as they crossed the threshold, I saw him go stiff, and I didn't know at that moment that he was gone, just like that. I thought he just was, because of the bump, I thought it was maybe a pain response, but once they got him in, they realized that he passed as soon as he got over the threshold of the house. And it was just so sudden and unexpected because they expected him to be there for a few more months. And I'd never been around for something like that, especially like grief so new and fresh, and it was a lot. And I remember thinking, as we were staying there, and the family, they're coming, and we don't know anybody, they're grieving. A woman popped up somewhere. I guess when the death was reported to her, and I can't remember, she was some kind of a county person, and it was basically her job to stay there with the body until it was time for burial. But she had a lot of paperwork. She just set herself up in the living room and just kind of like stayed out of it. And I remember I went up to her because the hard thing was that I just felt so ill-equipped to help the family. And yet I feel like I'm supposed to be the most equipped. I've got this badge, I've got certificate, from the prophet that says that I'm called and set apart to, to share the gospel and all of these things. And I just didn't know like what to say. I mean, I know the plan of salvation, but I'm not going to jump into a missionary lesson, among fresh grief. But at least I'm grateful that I knew better than to do that. But I didn't know what else to do, but I felt like I should, and I had nothing. So I remember going up to this woman and just saying, "What do I do? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help." And she had these glasses. She just kind of puts her hands, on her paperwork that's sitting there on her lap, and she just says, "Just listen. Let them tell stories about him. Ask about him. They tell me more. Let them just tell story after story, and go with it. Just listen."
that was
And that
great.
helped. Yeah, and I remember thinking afterwards, like, it's just interesting that, and as someone that's supposed to have all this extra special knowledge and privilege growing up in God's true church, that um this woman had so much more to offer me, to be able to offer other people. Like, she helped me be more helpful than my entire lifetime in the church helped me to be helpful for these people. And that was something that just kind of sat, in the back of my mind sometimes, and I don't know. It's just that one of the most important lessons I've ever learned. And anyway, I just wanted to share that for whoever needs it, I guess.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds to me like that was an incredible experience, being your first situation with a dead guy and situation with a grieving widow. That was, it sounds to me like you were very helpful. I appreciate you sharing that.
I guess I brought it up because what you were talking about the church and the plan of salvation. We think that it's so great, and we think that it's the best thing, but there really are a lot of holes and gaps, and there's really a lot of not good things about it. I think that's what I was thinking as you were talking, that it's what we think will help us in the church ends up really not being so helpful sometimes, and really kind of almost empty. And I guess we're not served as much as we think we are when we're in it. Yeah.
Yes, Melinda did not have a strong testimony. She only went to church because she felt obligated to. And when we got together and started going, I realized how miserable it was for her. And so we gradually kind of broke away from that. But, well, shoot, there was a point I was going to tell you, and now I can't remember what it was.
And I'll
About
step in just a second and just say that maybe that there's sort of a shallowness to some things that we come to, and if we dig a little deeper, there's nothing really there. And then people just say, "Oh, well, when we get to heaven, we'll understand. All our questions will be asked." And it's kind of a disservice in a way to say, whatever your concerns are, God doesn't really think that you need to know now. We're just going to pass that up and just live your life anyway.
Yep. And I remembered what I was going to say. I had three sisters. One of them just passed away. But I had three sisters who, are so TBM. Two of them have lost their husbands. And, I hear them say what I used to say all the time. Well, once we get to heaven, once we get into the celestial kingdom, you'll be with your husband forever. I can't say that. I cannot console them in that manner because I don't believe it's true. I believe more in reincarnation than I do in being elevated to either telestial, terrestrial, or celestial. And so
I think it's not helpful in the moment. When you're grieving, like you're grieving it, and even if it were true that they will be, it still hurts, and it hurts right now, and that's okay.
yeah, it hurts.
And I have a question, Randy. You had been married kind of fast, just
Yep.
because you might as well. I remember hearing something like, "You'll never find the perfect person, but you can try to be the perfect mate." Right? You'll never
Right.
find the perfect mate, but you try to be it, and it's the journey you're on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it just sort of, it's a similar thing. Like, everything will work out when whatever your problems are, they'll go away, right? When you die and when you get to heaven. But I wanted to get your perspective. You were in a marriage and you had children and you loved your wife while you were experiencing things. And yet Melinda becomes the love of your life. And what's the difference?
It's so true. It's so true. After Melinda, I thought, well, that's it. I won't be happy anymore. I'll never find a mate like her. Well, never say never, because 7 years ago, I walked in. I was having a photograph take, or I had a publicity photo that was taken for the book, and I wanted to be kind of tan in it. And I told my daughter, "Hey, I'm going to go tanning." She goes, "Oh, well, go to Sunny Buns, which is a place here in Spokane." She goes, "Go to Sunny Buns. They have the best prices. They have the best tanning beds. You'll love it." So I did. When I walked in, and this was now, well, 7 years ago. So, Melinda had been gone for about a while. 2010 was when she left. So anyway, I walked into this tanning place and I saw this girl at the front desk. And I'm telling you, I thought I was seeing a vision. She was gorgeous and so kind and sweet. And I'm only thinking this in a paternal way, not like I'm crushing on her or anything. But I had never seen, honestly, I had never seen someone so beautiful in my life. So I went to tan and did all that. I went back and forth a few times, and this girl was always so kind and so sweet. I thought, man, if I was 20 years younger, I would just be all over that. But my daughter called me and she says, "Dad," because I told she says, "Dad, did you go to Sunny Buns?" I'm like, "Did I go to Sunny Buns?" "Yes." And I saw the prettiest girl I've ever seen in my life. And they're like, and my daughter's like, "That's Amanda." I said, "Oh, wow, Amanda, that's great." And she told me a little bit about her because she kind of knew her. She called me up a couple nights later, my daughter, and she says, "Dad, you remember Amanda?" I said, "Yeah, I remember her." She said, "She's crushing on you." I said, "Shut up. No way. I'm an old man." And she's like 12 and not really 12.
Not, yeah.
But anyway, the next time I went tanning, she was there at the front desk. And I'm like, I'm thinking this can't be true. My daughter has to be mistaken. Because talk about a case of Beauty and the Beast, you know. But I went tanning, and as I was getting ready to leave, I thought, do I say something to her? But I didn't have to, because she said, "I like your truck." And I said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm Randy." She's like, "I'm Amanda." And we started chatting. And I found out that she had her master's degree in social work. And she was doing volunteer work at hospice. And I thought, this little light went off in my head. I said, "Just a minute, I have something for you." And I had a case of my books in the back of my truck because I had just picked them up. And I took it in and I said, maybe you'd like to read this. It's about death and dying and overcoming grief. And she said, "Oh, I'd love it. Would you sign it?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And so I took the book, and I don't know what possessed me. I do know what possessed me, but I wrote, "Amanda, thank you for making me glow on the outside as well as on the inside. Love, Randy C. Watts." Guess what? I got a Facebook invitation from her that night, and we just fell madly in love. And I know for a fact, because first of all, she has so many characteristics that Melinda did. I know for a fact that Melinda sent Amanda to me because we are so unlikely for a couple. I'm 65 now and she's 38. So we have 26 years between us. But I am so thankful for her, and I'm so thankful to Melinda because I know there's no doubt in my mind that she set us up. I know that for a fact. I feel that. And so, once again, I'm living very happily. And I know that there will come a time when Amanda's going to have to go through what I'm going through or what I went through with Melinda. And so I'm trying to make all the preparations I can so that the grief will be as little as possible. And I know That's not even possible, but I'm very grateful to have found Amanda. And I want to, my first wife's name was Linda, then I married Melinda, and now I'm with Amanda. A lot of us at the end of there, but I'm very thankful for her and very happy now. And
That's right. Duh, you're gonna fall in love with those people.
right,
Linda,
And
Amanda.
I want to say too, I think what's really beautiful, I think what's hard about grief is that it's so intense and you can't get away from it, which is what you were saying. You want to drink, you want to try drugs, and that's what people are looking for, is to be able to get a break from the pain and to just turn it off.
mm,
I know from when I've gone through grief, I've felt the similarly, like, if something can help just tone it down a little bit. And I know that that's wrong, and you have to feel it. When you're trying to turn it off, and when it gets so painful that you're trying to shut it down, that's where we make unhealthy decisions and unhealthy choices, and it almost increases it. So I for the most recent, I guess, grief period that I had to go through, I would get in my car and I would drive, and I wouldn't have anywhere to go, but my car, I guess, is my therapy. And I would just cry. I would cry out loud, because I think I don't like people hearing me cry. So living in a house, almost any house, but especially like with my other family members, if I did cry like loud and as much as I, feel, they would hear. And so, and that just keeps me from being able to do it. So I can do it in my car. So that's what I would do. I would drive and I would just sob, and I would scream, even just like, let it out. And sometimes it was silent, and I would talk, and sometimes I would yell, and sometimes I just play music that I liked. Sometimes I would play angry music or sad music or beautiful music. I would maybe listen or sing or slash shout along. And those things really helped me to get kind of the grief out, to kind of take it from inside and spread it out, and let some of it go. And I would be so tired and exhausted after that, but I would feel okay. And then I could go home, and it kept happening, because there's no one time and then you're done with it. Like, it's just, it keeps coming in waves, and I just kept trying to deal with it and push it out, like, as it came in. And I found that very helpful to me. But I just, yeah, in the moment, it seems like you'll never feel happy again. But what I did is I relied on the knowledge that, like, yes, I feel this way. I do genuinely feel like it's always going to be this intense. But I know from a fact, time moves on, time is a river, and as long as it's flowing, it takes pieces of this pain, and it will lessen over time. And I think that's what I like about your story. The grief is so much, and you said, I would never be married again, it's never happening again. And now, just when I'm just looking at you, your shirt, the Christmas tree, and the background is beautiful, and the fact that it's night now is a little different than when we started, because the tree is reflected in the window. It just seems like so happy, and Christmassy, got the bright colors and vibes. And anyway, I hope that anyone watching this, if they're going through something, like, can see that the future can look like this. You do have to sit with the pain, you have to process it, but there is more.
there. I love Christmas now. I love Christmas because I'm happy again. But in Filling Empty, the book, which is available on Amazon for anyone listening that might want it.
And we'll have a link in the description for the
Oh,
book.
good. Oh, thank you. Yeah. But my book makes 3 points. The first is, like you said, Maven, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The second one is, you're not alone. There's millions of people grieving right now. And the third is that your loved ones haven't gone as far as you may think they have. I don't know I don't have a guide or an instruction book. I wish I had that book on Beetlejuice, the handbook for the recently deceased, where it explains everything you're supposed to
Mm.
do dead now. Yeah, those are the 3 points it makes. People think that their loved ones go up somewhere or down somewhere, or they're nothing. But the spirit continues to exist. You cannot destroy matter. The spirit continues to exist in an energy form, but I don't know where it goes. I don't know if reincarnation is a thing. I don't know. I can't lean on the church teachings anymore. This is where I'm studying by myself and listening to others and their experiences to try to learn all I can. But you hit it on the head, Megan. It's grief will gradually. It's not a quick process, but it'll gradually lessen. I don't think that grief goes away. It just gets further away. And as it gets further away, it gets smaller. But I'll always love Melinda, and I'll always know that she's kind of watching over me like a guardian angel. And Amanda is watching over me like a guardian angel while she's still here. How blessed am I? I am so blessed, and I'm not sure why, but I'm very thankful for all my blessings. But who knows where they come from? I don't anymore.
Well, I think that you're an awesome guy, and so I am glad that you're able to have these two, love of your lives that you're able to do. There's a separation, between them. Like my story of leaving the church is that we were a part member family for like 5 years, but then my wife joined me, right? And everybody always sees that. They say, "Oh, how great it was that your wife joined you in leaving the church." It's like, yeah, but I went through hell for 5 years, right? Until that happened.
So did she continue attending?
Yeah.
While you were inactive?
Yes. She
Well,
was.
saw the light and joined you.
Yeah. So she was Relief Society president. Secretary. She was very dutiful. I didn't have enough ammunition at the time, and just like you said, around COVID time, I learned more. And so when I finally shared at the end of COVID summer, and she was able to get all that information and agree to stay, home with me as well at that time.
Nice.
So you picked up podcasting then as well. And you know what? I think we should talk about that another time. Let's bring you back.
I'd love to come back. I've got 2 books in the works. One is about the spiritual ghost story type things. And the other is, I don't have a name for it yet, but it's called A Book of Questions that no one can answer. I'm sure our prophet, seer, and revelator could just tell me everything I want to know, but I want something true. You know what I'm saying? Questions like, I believe in aliens. I believe in UFOs because I see video of them all the time. I see all these evidences. Who created them? Who do they worship? Because they weren't made in God's image that I know of. I think they're little gray men with big heads and big eyes, but I'm not sure. But who do they worship? Who created them? That's just one of the million questions I have that no one can ever answer. And people enjoy reading questions to which there's no answer.
That's right. You can almost title the book The Mysteries of God.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
And I feel that 8 billion people on Earth have different thoughts around what's going to happen to them, where they came from, where they're going. And that's okay. We're all on different parts of our paths,
Right.
And so, but we are able to work together most of the time, as humans. And Christmas is a time where we can be with family and be able to enjoy, the season. And for some people, it's kind of a lonely thing. Radio Free Mormon has his Christmas Eve special coming up, and so that's a place for somebody to go if they don't have anywhere else to go, and that's on Mormon Discussion podcast.
Yeah.
And so, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh,
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you too. It's people like you that have helped me so much in my man's search for happiness. And I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity you've given me to be part of this. So I look forward to the next time.
That's right.
Me too.
The end of the year is coming. Hope everybody has a good end of the year. Do the things like subscribe, and we'll see more of Randy in the future.
Next time, we'll get into a few Disney secrets that you would love to know about.
All right.
Okay.
I know There's like 10 shows we could do with you. Totally.
Yeah.
We'll
Well, thank
talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.